This is Life Transformation Radio. Prepare to engage. Seatbelt activated. Download initiated. Your quantum journey of transformation begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Life Transformation Radio. Hi, I'm Rob Actis, best-selling author of The Law of Action, voice actor, business mindset coach, the podcast whisperer, and Mr. Action himself. Here at Life Transformation Radio, we are committed to share more about real life, love, the power of positivity, romance, and of course, laughter. We care about helping others find their internal drive and purpose. We celebrate life's challenges and overcoming them. On the show, my guests are amazing people who are forces for good in the world around them and live a life of transformation. My guest today does just that. Today's episode, so excited, Dr. Steven Lycka and I discuss how to live a fantastic life. If you want to gain the confidence, courage it takes to have a fantastic life and understand that it's not what happens to you in your life, it's about what you do with what happens that matters most, this is the show for you. In this episode, you'll discover how to live a fantastic life. It's not what happens to you. It's what you do with it that happens. Dr. Steven Lycka, let me tell you, he is here. And in 2003, he was diagnosed with ALS and given 6 months to live. After fighting the diagnosis, he is here today as a result of his courage and determination. Having been given a golden ticket, Dr. Lycka used his experience to co-author the book, The Secrets of Living a Fantastic Life with Harriet Tinka, and he speaks to groups around the world about transforming lives, and it's perfect that you're here today on Life Transformation Radio.
Thank you for having me, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, let's just cut right to the chase and talk about how you were diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, in 2003 and given 6 months to live.
Well, it was interesting. I was walking with my wife and my youngest daughter in Disneyland, the happiest place on earth. It was a banner year. I was at the top of my career. I was doing interesting things in cosmetic surgery. I was bringing new things on, but I decided to take a break. So we went to Disneyland. It's supposed to be the happiest place on earth, the place to celebrate all your victories. So we were walking and my wife turned to me and she said, "What's wrong with you, hon?" I was taken aback, Rob. I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't said anything wrong. I literally hadn't done anything wrong. So, what do you do, Rob? My wife persisted. She said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Dear, I don't think there's anything wrong with you." And she said, "Listen to your foot." I said, "What do you mean, listen to your foot? That's the funniest thing I think you've ever said." She said, "Listen to it." Well, my right foot had suddenly and mysteriously developed a right foot drop. It was flapping on the pavement with each step I was taking. Your brain is designed not to do that. It's designed to lift up your foot with each step you're taking. But my right foot wasn't doing that. So she said, "Did you have a stroke?" I said, "No, dear, I didn't have a stroke. If I had a stroke, I'd be lying on the pavement saying something unintelligible." Well, she said, "When you get back, you better get this checked out." Well, Rob, when your wife gives that ultimatum, what do?
You get it checked out.
You get it checked out.
Absolutely.
So I got back. I started seeing doctors who were friends. And I saw more doctors. And I saw more doctors. And I saw more doctors. They did every test known. They did CAT scans. They did brain scans. They even did scans. And you know what they showed?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And that's the perplexing thing. They thought I had a brain tumor, or they thought I had a slipped disc, but they couldn't find anything. So when a doctor finds nothing wrong, what he does is more tests and more tests and more tests. So I had tests that weren't even invented then. I'm sure they invented tests just to do tests back then. And at the end of the day, they still found nothing. So they decided to send me to a world-leading neurologist. A neurologist is the brain guy. He's got the answer to all these complex problems. So
Yes.
what he said was, Dr. Lycka, you better be sitting down when I tell you this. I said, why? I've got a dropped right foot. He said, no, you don't. You have ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Get your affairs in order. You're going to be dead in 6 months.
Wow.
I turned to him and I said,
that's a lot to take in.
That's a lot to take in. I said, is there a way to prove this diagnosis? He said, of course, on autopsy.
I'm speechless.
That leaves you speechless, doesn't it, Rob? What do you say? So I slammed the door and I left and I said, I'm not going to die to prove you wrong. And, when you go through this, you go through the phases of death and dying that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote in her book on death and dying. You go through anger. You're angry at the world. You could bite the head off nails. The only good thing about anger is it motivates you, but you're angry at everything. I was angry at my wife. I was angry at my staff. I was angry at my children. Why? I was being shortchanged on life. You go through bargaining. You say, oh God, please don't let this happen. I'll do anything if you don't let this happen. I thought God wasn't listening back then. But, as time moved on, I was wrong. You go through denial. You deny that anything's wrong. I kept on going. I kept on pushing myself harder and harder until finally my right arm started not working right, like my right leg wasn't. And so I couldn't hold surgical instruments like I used to. But the good news is I was ambidextrous, so I could use my left hand as good as my right. So I was able to overcome that obstacle. The last phase is depression. Have you ever been depressed, Rob?
Oh yeah. I had a pretty severe blood clot. It was from the top of my hip to my ankle, and I ignored it. And I had the doctor look at me and said, you should be dead. I don't know how you're alive. And things don't look really good for you. Over the next 3.5 months, we're going to determine if you live or not. So yeah, you do experience that depression. It's weird because I'm just curious. When this happened to me and I discovered it, I felt like I was going to die. And I talk about this often. And I don't even know how to describe what it feels like, oh man, I'm going to die. Did you have that feeling?
Oh yeah. Everything is black. Everything is so black. Everything is so negative. You could stay in bed all day, lying at the ceiling and saying, there's no reason to get out. This is the end. This is the last phase. This is the black phase. And that's what I call it, the black time in your life.
Yeah. It's definitely profound in that people that are facing near-death experiences or they've been told they have a limited time, and I'll say this as often as I can, and just hopefully people will get it, is that you don't go back and think, God, I wish I had a bigger house. I wish I had a better car. I wish I had, more technology. The one thing that I did, and you have to let me know if you did the same thing, is the moments I was going to miss. I missed the moments. I wish I would have spent more time with this person, or I would have spent more time with this person, or I would have said this to that person. That's all that really matters. That's all that matters. What went through my brain was that I didn't care about any accomplishment I had or anything like that.
Accomplishments mean nothing because they're going to be over. Accomplishments mean absolutely nothing. And so, at that phase, I wasn't going to let myself die from ALS. It was a terrible disease. And if I was going to get worse, I was going to kill myself. And so I had a plan mapped out to kill myself. And a lot of people that are depressed do have plans to kill themselves.
Yeah. And
So I want the listener, if they're feeling that bad, to get professional help immediately. I want them to really seek out, because really there is hope in even the darkest situations.
yeah, absolutely. It's no joke. I have many friends that passed away during COVID that took their lives. I mean, I more than on one hand I did, and even one that was a suicide attempted murder. And it ain't no joke. And I was going to just bring up this. This is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, and it's 988lifeline.org. You can also find that as an SMS, and you just do 988. And it's available 24 hours a day. It's around, I know people that have actually used it and have not killed themselves, not taken their lives. So it's very, very powerful. Very powerful.
Yeah. So I think that's
But
powerful.
I want to give that out.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I'm glad you didn't take your life. And, that was 2003. You had 6 months to live. And I think you're here a little bit longer than 6 months. Yay.
so let's go on with the rest of the story. What happened next is I went to my wife and I said to my wife, dear, what do I have? She said, I haven't got the faintest idea. But she said, you're smart. You'll figure that out. I said, dear, I've seen hundreds of doctors. They couldn't figure it out. How could I figure it out? She said, I think you just haven't seen the right doctor yet. So, back in the early 2000s, something brand new was invented. It was called the internet. You ever heard of that beast?
I have heard of it. I use it on a regular basis. Matter of fact, daily. And matter of fact, I just use the internet to find that information, the power of it. Yeah, it definitely has changed medicine, hasn't it? Because it's not just your geographical area. You have the entire world to discover.
You do. But back in the early 2000s, it was primitive. You literally had to get on by dial-on connections. You had to put your phone on a cradle. It would go ria, ria, ria for something like 15 minutes. And finally, if you connected, you'd get to the other side.
You probably connected on AOL to do the search groups.
And the other thing is, computers had no memory back then. So you literally had to connect via a language like DOS or some other primitive language because you couldn't get on any other way. Now, I had friends that were nerds. So they helped me search the other side. And I found a doctor by the name of David Martz who had a story very similar to mine, yet it was very different. He got worse much more rapidly than I did. And he was on his deathbed within weeks of his diagnosis. He was so weak, he couldn't lift his head from his pillow. He was so well loved, doctors from around the world were coming to say goodbye to David. And a doctor came up from Texas, a doctor from Harvey, and he looked at David. He said, David, there's something wrong with this picture. He said, I don't think you have ALS. He said, and David said, what do I have? He could only whisper because he was so weak at that time. The doctor said, I think you have chronic Lyme's disease. I think you've been bitten by a tick, and I think it's mimicking ALS. And I think if I start you on treatment, I can make you better. Well, David said, what do I have to lose? I'm dying. And so he started him on treatment, and a miracle happened. He was like Lazarus arising from the dead. Within 2 weeks, he was back to his regular self. So, I knew I had to get in touch with this magical person in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So I phoned every hospital in Colorado Springs, and I got in touch with David at the Methodist Hospital in Colorado Springs. And we talked for hours. And David said, can you come down and see me? And I said, when? He said, right now. I said, David, I can't. I said, I live in Canada, and it's Thanksgiving in Canada, and my wife has invited 50 people over. He said, aren't there any planes in Canada? He wasn't going to let me get off that easily. So
yeah, I think I would have been.
my-
I think I would have been in Colorado.
Yeah.
With what you went through, I think I'm like, Thanksgiving can wait. I think we're going to Colorado.
Yeah. And I went to talk to my wife, and I went with my hat in hand, and I said, dear, I'm not going to be here for Thanksgiving. And she said, why? I said, look, dear, there's a doctor in Colorado Springs that claims he can help me. She said, well, get your bags together. Let's get you to the airport. I will even drive you, she said. So I got to the airport, a beautiful flight from Edmonton to Denver, 3 hours long. But then in Denver, I had to transfer and get on a rinky-dink puddle jumper from Denver to Colorado Springs. You ever been on a rinky-dink puddle jumper, Rob?
I have. And Colorado Springs is absolutely beautiful. It's incredible. I mean, I've driven from Denver to Colorado Springs, but I've been on small little planes in the Key West.
The problem with
Florida
the planes
Keys.
at the end of the day is air comes off the desert and it creates eddies. So that short flight, only about 15 minutes long, is full of turbulence. So the plane will be going along and it'll drop 100 feet without warning. It'll fly along and then it'll drop another 200 feet without warning. So it's like the drop of doom at Disneyland over and over and over again. And when you get off, you're like green because you're just winded from that flight. So I got off, and there was David on the tarmac to meet me. You see, this was the early 2000s, and they hadn't put on all the safety precautions yet. And David said,
back in the day,
when things were easy, not the way they are now. So David said to me, you don't look so good. I said, I don't feel so good. He said, well, this is just a metaphor for what you've gone through. And we talked for hours. And David said, Dr. Lycka, I think history is repeating itself. I think I can start you on treatment and make you better. And he did. And that's why I'm still here. And in 2022, still thriving despite what I've gone through.
Well, you know what's amazing about that is that had you not had the inspired action to move forward with momentum and do whatever it takes to live your life like you want to be alive, like you kept finding different ways to find a solution. You have an incredible supportive wife. You wouldn't have been here. Like you wouldn't have been here because you probably would have either taken your life or you would have passed because it sounds like it was getting worse and worse. And look at that. Because of your sheer determination, your will to live, and of course, the support of your wife, she sounds amazing. You're here today, which is just wonderful and beautiful.
Well, and it is wonderful. But this is where transformation comes in, Rob. And this is what people have to realize. When you go through something like this, you either get hard and evil and mean, or you start to give back. And that's what I decided to do, to start to give back. And one of the things I started to do was support an organization called the YWCA, which ran a gala for women to support them in society. Because, even in this day and age, women are not getting the kudos they need. So I decided to be the grand master. And we put on this gala award for a number of years. And at that event, a wonderful lady by the name of Harriet Tinka came, and she decided to apply for an award called the Turning Points Award. Now, Harriet is an amazing lady. She was a world-class model walking the the runways of New York, Milan, Paris. But it's a dog-eat-dog industry. So she decided to give it up. She decided to take up her second love, which is accounting. So she went to the University of Calgary in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and take a degree there. But unfortunately, she was befriended by a person who turned it out to be a psychopath. And he kidnapped her, he stabbed her, and he left her for dead. Now, Harriet ended up in the hospital, going through rehab, and she was totally beside herself. But a young girl by the name of Amber came up in a wheelchair, as happy as a lark. And Amber looked at Harriet and said, "What's your story?" And Harriet told her story. And Amber said, "You should be ashamed of yourself," she said. "You need to use that story to empower women." She said, "Look, I was just in a car accident. I lost both of my parents and I've lost use to my legs." But she said, "I'm going to make something of myself." But she said, "You need to do that." So she challenged Harriet to do something. And Harriet applied for an award, not to win an award at the gala, but to meet me. And she wanted to meet me to encourage us to write a book together. And that's where we wrote The Secrets to Living a Fantastic Life. And it's about our experiences. But more importantly, it's about 13 golden pearls we found that are deep down inside of each and every one of us, that every one of us can draw on to make our life a better experience and a better life just by doing so.
I love it. We'll share some pearls. I'm ready. Drop them down.
Okay. Now, the book starts at pearl number 1, which is love, the strongest of all pearls, and ends in pearl number 13, which is empowerment. And between those are all the magical things that can take you along the way. Now, why is love the most important thing? Well, first of all, it's one of the few things that you can get by giving more of. You get more by giving more. So it's important to do that. Now, each chapter begins with a quote. So here's me quoting myself. Love. I believe that dreaming is stronger than reality. Desire is more potent than apathy. Hope is more powerful than despair. Joy always triumphs over sorrow. That laughter is the ultimate cure for mankind's foibles. And I believe that love is stronger than hate, the greatest gift of all.
Love it. Love it. So from love, we go to, what's the next pearl? Drop some pearls.
Yes, I will drop you the next pearl. The next one is inspiration.
Love inspiration.
Inspiration is about inspire, the breath of the spirit. Because if you're inspired, you will move forward. And everybody needs to look for inspiration every day. Now, inspiration is all around us and inside of us. You just have to look and see it. You know, it can come in as simple as reading a book. It can come from a podcast such as yours, Rob. It can come in any form, but you have to be receptive to that inspiration that's there.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, inspiration is a very powerful thing. And it's wonderful to inspire others. And it's truly life-altering to be inspired by others.
Exactly. Now, number 3 is victory. Now, why is victory so important? Well, we live for victory. All mankind lives for victory. We always want to be victorious. But what powers us to victory is golden pearl number 4, which is vulnerability. Rob, you cannot be victorious without putting it all on the line, without putting it right there, because that allows you to be victorious in all ways. You know, by being vulnerable, you might lose that race. But if you don't put it on the line, you never have a chance of winning that race.
Absolutely. It's an all in. You have to leave everything on the field in order to succeed. And that's with relationships. It's with business. It's with sports. And definitely in life, you have to leave it all on the field.
You got to leave it all there. And you got to do it every day. You can't just choose and decide, I'm only going to do this 50% or 20%. No, it's got to be all the time there.
It is. And it creates momentum. When you are fully engaged in your life, it creates an incredible momentum in your life, which gives you that happily ever after that we all want and deserve.
The next golden pearl is purpose. All of us need a purpose in life. And I know you have a purpose, Rob. Part of your purpose is this podcast that you do. But I like to share the Japanese meaning of purpose. It is a concept called ikigai. And it incorporates 4 overlapping circles in a Venn diagram. So think of the things that you love. Think of the things that you are good at. Think of the things that the world needs. And think of the things you can be paid for. And all of those overlapping things are your ikigai. So it takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of effort. But at the end of the day, you can say what your ikigai is. And therefore, you can come up with your supreme purpose. And your supreme purpose can be used in such a way that you can decide how you can do that. You know, I have said my purpose in life is to empower people to live their best life in a context of laughter, enthusiasm, love, thankfulness, and happiness. And that is my purpose. And I try to achieve that each and every day in everything I do.
Well, I think laughter is probably one of the most powerful emotions that we have. I know a lot of people that have been suffering cancer, and the one thing that just gives them relief in all ways is just to laugh their asses off. Just uncontrollable laughter. There's something about it. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but I would imagine that laughter would increase the dopamine in your brain, and dopamine feels really good and it just lightens you up. But I will tell you that laughter is definitely the best medicine. I know when I've had my down days, I know if I can laugh, I'm pretty okay.
Yeah, definitely. There's no doubt that if you can laugh at any day, you're going to be having a good day. Now, I think that there's a proof that there's a benign being because he's given us the ability to laugh in the face of some of the worst catastrophic things that goes on. And I think we have to realize that laughter is something that buoys us from the depths of despair at any given time.
Yeah, I will tell you something, what you just said. So I was a wedding DJ for a long, long time. I've done thousands of wedding receptions as a DJ, and I've seen lots of things, and I could write a book on some of the stories that I've seen. And, brides are pretty intense at weddings. They're pretty intense. And I remember this one bride, she was really intense. I would call her the bridezilla. Everything had to be perfect, and she was so stressed out. Like anything that went, she just lost her freaking mind. And it wasn't even a positive lose your mind, like friendly. She was like, I was afraid of her. I'll just put it that way. So we're doing the cutting of the cake. And they're coming out and they're getting ready. I brought everybody's attention. Everybody's looking at the cake, and it's this beautiful cake. I mean, we're talking, they spend a lot of money on this cake. And of course, what do you have at wedding receptions? You have kids running around and playing and messing around, because I used to do that at wedding receptions. Out of control kids. We're just getting ready. They're just about ready. I'm saying, now it's time. They're getting ready to cut the cake. And there was kids that were running around, and they started running, and they pushed the other kid and pushed it right into the table. The table went down. The cake went down. The bride and the groom went down. The bride almost cut the husband because she had the knife, and it was just terrible. And there's this gasp of just dead silence. And like nothing. And this bridezilla bride, who I'm afraid of, looks around the room, and I thought she was going to kill people. I actually thought she had a knife in her hand. I'm like, oh my God, she's going to kill people. And she busted up laughing. And the family and friends started laughing, and it just was uncontrolled because it was such a dramatic moment. This wedding could have been ruined, and she just laughed and laughed and laughed. Now, it could have been stress, but it was amazing how this energy in the room shifted so dramatically, like so dramatically. And yeah, that is the power of laughter. And we have a choice because it could have turned into this really negative experience. And it turned into, like, what happened was she actually went back and apologized. Like, she apologized to me. She goes, I've really been a bitch and I'm so sorry. I realized, and I heard from the wedding event planner, she apologized to her. And it was just this reality check. Like, life is not that serious. So yeah, that was my laughter story of just like, you think it's not going to be laughter, but we as humans can find laughter in pretty much anything. And most brides wouldn't find that funny, but this woman did.
Well, and that's how we can turn it around. I mean, it could be the most devastating thing that's going on. Yet, if you find some humor in it, it truly changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, drop me some more pearls. Come on.
Okay. The next one is non-negotiables. Rob, do you have a list of non-negotiables?
Are you referring to boundaries in my world? Like boundaries?
I'm talking about things in your life that you will never transcend, things that you will never go on, things that you will never let go. For example, for me, it's family. That is my greatest accomplishment and the thing. So anytime I'm putting my schedule together, anytime I'm doing things, they become number one in everything. So what do you have as things on your list that are really important so that you put things as priorities and keep those priorities straight in your mind?
Well, family's incredibly important. And the other thing, and I will lean into the boundaries because I think boundaries are super important. And the one boundary I have is don't lie to me. Like, don't lie. That's a hard boundary in my life. It just, I don't give a lot of credence to people that lie. And I just, it's hard to move forward with that. And so that's when there's transformation in my life. And usually if someone's lying to me, they will be transformed and transitioned out of my life. That's pretty strong for me.
Yeah. And I think those are important. And everybody should have a list of things they will not accept or in their life, things they will not allow to break into their life and destroy their life.
Yeah. I think it's lying. And another one just popped up would be just always negative and always just complain about everything. Nothing is ever positive. And I can't be around people like that. I can't. Because if you're all stressed out, the one thing you can do is give gratitude. And the biggest gratitude I have is that, and I think it might be the same for you, Alan, is that we're alive. Like, we're alive. Every day I wake up in the morning before my eyes even open up. You wake up before your eyes, you wake up, your eyes are closed. And I always am so grateful. And I say it, I am so grateful.
Well, from what I've gone through, every day is a bonus day. It's day
magic.
Is something I have to say, oh my God, look, every day is something I now have that I wasn't supposed to have back in 2003.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that is one of my pearls too. That was pearl number 9. But pearl number 7 is forgiveness. I think that is one of the secrets of living a full life is forgiving others for hurting you and you forgiving yourself for the things you did or didn't do. That is something that's a very powerful thing.
I love it. Well, if you want to find out more pearls, you can read the book. You can also reach out to Alan. It's dralanlycka.com. And Alan, I just want to thank you so much for being here today. And I'm glad you're alive, man.
This was really a lot of fun. I always enjoy these shows. And this is something that I think we were able to do a lot with today and help your listeners.
Absolutely. 100%. Thank you for being here today. And thank you so much for your support and taking the time out of your busy and precious day to listen to Life Transformation Radio. I so appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me, along with my very special guest, to touch your heart, move your soul, and inspire you to live a life of transformation. I'm Rob Actis. Until next time.
This is Life Transformation Radio. Download complete.